Hi there, I'm Patrick. I run a small business called Charlie's Coffee Co. It's named after my dog Charlie, and I roast coffee. This is my interview show. It's called Grounds Up. Basically, I sit down with cool people who are doing interesting things and have a conversation with them over a bunch of cups of coffee. It's a super original format that I didn't rip off from any other YouTube interview show. Today on the show, I am joined by Kyla Scanlon. She is a writer, commentator, and educator covering everything from crypto to macroeconomics. She's written for the New York Times, Bloomberg, Yahoo Finance, as well as her own Substack, which is great, and you should definitely check it out. You may also know her from her YouTube or TikTok videos covering the stock market and the economy. Kyla's work is focused on making economics accessible for people like myself, and I love the human approach that she takes in all of her work. She has somehow made poetry and economics go together like peanut butter and chocolate. Full disclosure, I'm not an economist, obviously. I just did my best to ask questions about things that I would want to know just as a normal person interested in the economy. I really enjoyed having Kyla on the show, even if I was a bit intimidated by the source material, but I learned a ton and had a really great time. Anyway, grab a seat, pour yourself a cup of coffee, and get ready for a fun episode. Kyla, welcome to the show.
Yeah.
It's great to have you. You flew all the way here from New York, so thank you for making the trip out. Really appreciate that. I know it's probably a lot of travel, and you've had a busy couple of months, weeks,
years.
Years. Yeah.
No, it's been good. Yeah.
So thanks for taking the time.
Yeah.
Before we jump into drinking some coffee, just want to get a kind of a quick pulse check. What is your relationship with coffee?
Oh, I really like it.
Okay.
Yeah, like to the point where it's really addictive.
Yeah.
I have to have it when I wake up. So when you asked me, like when you emailed me and you're like, I do this coffee show, I was like, absolutely.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I love coffee.
Mission accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet. Well, so the kind of setup here is we're going to go starting on your end to my end, and we're going to try just a really broad variety of coffees from a bunch of different roasters. We have my own coffee in here as well. If you don't like it, that's okay. But yeah, basically the goal is just like a bunch of different coffees. We kind of have a topic per coffee that I'll run through. So there's like a handful of questions I have about just like all of the aspects of what you do and your interests. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of pretty chill, so feel free to like drink at your leisure. But if you want to pop the cap off of that first one, we can pour a little cup of these.
Like the cap?
Yeah. So you could either maybe just pull the whole lid off. That might work better.
I don't want to spill it. It's like the first test. Here you are.
Perfect. Awesome. And let me know how much you want to. I can pour more or less. We've got a lot of coffees to try, so I don't want to like over caffeinate you too soon.
Yeah, no, that would be bad. I meant to eat before I came here.
Oh shoot.
It's okay.
I have some granola bars.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, but I like destroyed my stomach lining because I was drinking coffee without eating anything.
I do that.
Yeah, well,
I did not realize
that
would
bad for you. Yeah.
Shoot. Okay.
But coffee's great for you. We love coffee.
Yeah,
it's just,
absolutely.
It's good to eat with
Eat
it.
first.
Yeah.
This is a coffee from India, which is
cool.
really uncommon in the specialty coffee world. So that's kind of like the umbrella term for all of these different kind of coffee roasters that we'll try today. So the focus is like more of like a wine kind of aspect to it. Than like a Starbucks. So each one should have like its own tasting notes.
Yeah.
And feel free to like look at the bag too as you go.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a roaster called Huckleberry, and they're based out of Denver. So there's actually 2 Denver roasters, which I did not like mean to do, but we've got 2 Denver roasters.
I didn't know
today.
Denver was making all this coffee.
I know. They've got a pretty good coffee scene. I've been to one of their shops in Denver, and they have some really good stuff. So
Cool. Okay, it tastes like honeygram, almond, cocoa. Cocoa?
I think
Raisin?
actually, yeah, it's like the bean, I think is what
Cacao.
they usually. Yeah. So yeah, let me know if you have any thoughts on each coffee and kind of sip it as we go, but
it's smooth.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
What do you normally drink, actually? That's a good question.
Oh gosh, I'm like not a connoisseur. Yeah.
I think I just realized. I'm so sorry. I forgot to turn on this camera.
It's good you remembered.
Oh no, it's on. Okay, good. I had like a little panic moment of like.
Yeah, that happens to me all the
three
time.
beeps
Yeah.
in my head.
Are they all?
Yeah,
that
I
one's
think
definitely
we're
on.
all good, and
Yeah.
we're recording on the audio. So
Yeah.
this is why I need more people.
Yeah.
To be like checking stuff, but
Yeah, it really. I don't have anybody
it's
helping
crazy.
me. Yeah.
There's so much work that goes into
Yeah,
it.
it's crazy. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we'll jump into some questions. First, I want to talk about economics because I find your approach really interesting. And specifically, one thing I really appreciate about your work is it feels like you always kind of don't seem to forget or always bring in like the human aspect, the humanity of kind of these big numbers. How do you, as somebody who's probably surrounded by data and numbers all the time, how do you make sure that you don't forget that there's like a human aspect to those numbers and charts?
I mean, I don't know. I think that I look at the numbers and charts with the human aspect first. So it's not that I don't forget about it or like can't not remember it. It's like that's how I see the charts and I see the data. And so like when we're talking about the labor market, we're talking about inflation. You know, we're talking about like real things that impact real people. So like the jobs report came out today, like jobs are a little bit improved and everyone's like, oh dang, like the Fed is gonna have to raise rates again. It's like, oh my gosh. Like we just often forget like, okay, you know, the labor market being good is good at the end of the day. And so that's what I just try to remember is, you know, the economics, you can lose so much of that.
Yeah.
So I think it's just important to recenter people because people are the economy. Yeah.
Totally. Do you feel like your time growing up in like rural Kentucky or like a more rural part of the country helped you have that perspective?
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I never really thought about like why I do it the way that I do it. I think that when you do social media, you're oftentimes interfacing with comments and commenters and the audience. So when I started doing social media, I just became really aware of like what people were saying in the comment section about their own personal situation. So I don't know if it was like growing up in Kentucky, but I just became really aware really quickly of how people were feeling because they would tell me.
Yeah.
And so I think that's like one benefit of social media and doing economics within social media is that the audience communicates.
Yeah.
And that enables you to remember like these are people, right, that we're talking about and talking to.
Yeah, totally. I've heard you talk a lot about how economics is more of an art than a science. If it's an art, what would be your canvas and what would be your brush strokes?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the first person to say that just in case any economists get mad, but I think that what would be the canvas and what would be the brush, like you could point to like data points, I suppose, being the canvas and how you interpret the data points as being a brush. So economics, like the reason it's an art and not a science is because there's people involved. So it's not like when you're doing biology or you're doing chemistry and there's like a reaction, right? And like that's pretty apparent, it's pretty objective. Whereas like what I was just talking about with the labor market, like how you interpret labor market metrics can be pretty subjective. And so like that's why it's more of an art than a science is like everything has a story and a narrative behind it. Like it's not just 1 + 1 = 2.
Yeah. Interesting. I would really love to hear you talk about how you view the relationship between economics and philosophy.
I mean, I love philosophy. So I think that so philosophy sort of teaches you how the world works, like through the lens of these thinkers and, you know, they're flawed, whatever. But I think that economics and philosophy can be tightly tied together because economics is a school of thought essentially, and so if you can tie more frameworks and more philosophical outlooks into economics, I think that's more beneficial for people. Like I feel like people kind of get blinders on when talking about the economy, like they're like, oh, things have to be a certain way, they have to interpret things a certain way, which is true to a certain extent, but I think when you do more philosophical approaches and like incorporate Simone de Beauvoir or other people into it, I think that just helps humanize it a little bit more because philosophy is the study of humans, you know, economics is also the study of humans, right?
Yeah,
so,
totally. What do you have any like philosophers that you really like admire or like use in your work a lot? I know you reference a lot of like poets, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, I love poetry. Simone de Beauvoir, I really like her. Camus. So it's the Russian lit scene. Like I really was into that for a while. Not necessarily philosophers, right? But writers. So I'd say, yeah, like a lot of French philosophers have been pretty influential to me in how I interpret things. Like I did this whole piece applying one of Simone de Beauvoir's frameworks to the economy. So yeah.
What was that like? Like, was it a fun exercise for you, or like, did it help you view the data differently?
I think so. Yeah, like it was like the 5 stages of man, right? So like talking about how when you're the most evolved person of yourself, like you're really existing within a community, like you exist for things outside of yourself, versus if you're like less evolved, you exist sort of just for yourself. And so I think like showing people like these steps and these ideas of like, okay, this is what this philosopher thinks, and this is how we can think about it within an economic context is important. Because, you know, when we talk about economics, a lot of people get stuck because they're like, oh, it's not relatable to me, even though they live inside of it every day.
Right.
And so I think it's just like, how do you get more avenues for people to relate to it? And that's why philosophy is good, in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I found that personally, like watching your content, like I've never been interested in economics.
Oh, good. Okay.
All of a sudden I was like, oh, wow. Okay,
really?
like this makes sense to me.
Oh,
in a way that
good.
it hadn't before.
I'm really glad to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
It's definitely working.
Okay, good. Sometimes you don't know. So yeah.
Absolutely. Can you give me a brief description of why GDP is a bad metric for measuring the economy?
Yeah. Gross domestic product. Yeah. So gross domestic product incorporates like consumer spending, government spending, investment spending, and exports. So like trade data, exports minus imports. And that is just a lot of flows within the economy. So like how people are spending money, how the government is spending money, how businesses are spending money, how we're doing trade overseas. And it's not necessarily a bad metric. It's just maybe not encompassing everything that we should know about the economy. So the Academy of Arts and Sciences is actually publishing a paper sort of talking about this as well, where it's like, you know, we talk about these financial metrics, like we talk about the flows within the economy, we talk about like how people are doing based on how they're spending money, which is reductive, but like that's sort of what that's measuring. But really maybe we should focus on like well-being and financial security, and like, do people have access to healthcare? Like, do rural areas have access to Wi-Fi? Like things like that. Yeah. And so I think GDP captures some aspects of the economy, right? Like these flows, how money is moving, how dynamic that is, but it doesn't capture the well-being of a person, right? And so the country Bhutan has this metric called gross domestic happiness. I don't think that's right either. Like I think there's a happy medium in between GDH and GDP that is more reflective of, you know, opportunity, of financial security, of consumer well-being, versus like, are they spending money, right? Yeah.
What do you feel like is the metric that we should be using more of, at least in the US?
I mean, I think there's a lot that we could measure around accessibility. I think that like healthcare spend is a big one, like healthcare access is a big one. I don't think that there's any particular metric that exists right now that we could use. I think something would have to be created, like sort of like a GDP, right? Like bundling all these different metrics together. But I think like focusing more on well-being would be really important.
Yeah, totally. I'm curious if you feel like sometimes I when I hear about like economics, it almost feels like we're asking too much of numbers to like give us a sense of how something is doing. Is like, I guess, is it almost too much to ask for like one metric to define the economy?
Oh yeah, sure, yeah. And I think now like the economy is so intertwined and so confusing, and so like the reason that we use stuff like GDP is because it is really confusing, and there has to be some sort of main metric that we can point to just on relative terms too, to be like, oh, we had this, you know, growth metric in GDP in 2010, and here it is in 2023, and this is how it looks different. And so it's really important on a relative basis to like have those sorts of things, but it's very like we look at more than just GDP to measure the economy, and it's difficult to measure it all.
Totally. How would you grade Jerome Powell's tightrope walk after the pandemic, kind of balancing inflation and the looming recession?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's had a tough go of it. So for Jerome Powell, right, like they have this dual mandate of price stability and maximum employment. That's what the Federal Reserve is in charge of managing, like making sure prices aren't skyrocketing and then making sure that people who want a job can get a job. And so for them, you know, inflation was raging, right? Like it was really expensive to be alive. And so they had to raise rates really quickly in order to calm all that down and make sure that people could, you know, get to where they needed to go and buy the things that they needed. But oftentimes the toolkit that they're using, so raising rates to make it more expensive to be alive, so the economy slows down, so inflation slows down, that can impact the labor market. And so they have had this balance where it's like, okay, so we're raising rates really fast, the labor market is still doing okay, like unemployment is still really low, people are still fine, right? And so I think that they have achieved something that nobody thought that they could achieve, especially raising rates so quickly. Like they raised rates like 500 basis points, and they might still raise them again. And the labor market has remained okay. But I think the big question for the Federal Reserve, and they're aware of this, I think, is like the Roosevelt Institute published this paper talking about how 73% of the inflation that we've had has been solved by just expanding supply, not by raising rates, right? And so what the Federal Reserve did is they took a supply side issue, which had happened with the pandemic. So there wasn't enough things for all the things that people wanted to buy. So inflation was really high, right? Like it's more than just that, but that was the main issue. Like the supply chains broke. And when you do what the Federal Reserve did, which was like destroy demand by raising rates, it might not be the best solution versus us just expanding supply actually helped fix inflation. And so in terms of like Jerome Powell balancing the tightrope, they've done a really good job. But the worry is like the job that they did was not their job, right? Like it might not be them saving the economy. It might be the economy just normalizing by itself. And now in the next few years, we're going to have to deal with the aftermath of raising rates that fast. Like the lag effect might take place. Yeah.
Do you feel like it, I mean, from my perspective at least, it feels like people kind of rely on the Fed to fix the economy when it's headed like into a bad place. Do you feel like that's justified, or are they more of like one tool in the toolbox that we kind of look to?
I would say that we've relied on them to fix the economy. So the Fed will come out and, cut rates if the economy needs to speed up. They're like, okay, here's money for everyone. Banks like, go lend out and, have fun, people. And I think that's good. But when we're talking about the inflation that we've experienced and the dynamics in the labor market, the Federal Reserve raising rates or cutting rates or rolling assets off their balance sheet or buying bonds in the market, like that's not going to fix underlying issues that we have, right? Yeah. Like the Federal Reserve can't pump more oil or build more highways, right? And so I think like a lot of the solutions that people want are fiscal policy. And we could go to the Federal Reserve and say, okay, we're going to expand your dual mandate more than just price stability and maximum employment, and we're going to make you in charge of all these other things as well, but we don't do that, right? And so I think the government is in charge of a lot of the stuff that people want to see, not the Fed.
Yeah, totally. I guess when it comes to kind of Jerome Powell's like performance there, was there anything that surprised you or like shocked you? You're like, they can be raising rates again, or like the amount that they raised them, like, or even just the outcomes? I
think how fast they went was sort of surprising, but inflation was so bad. There's like a political issue there, right? So they had to take care of it. I think like what I'm, and everyone's sort of paying attention to it now, is like what happens next. So they paused with this most recent rate hike in September, and I think the worry is like, will they continue raising rates into the winter? And if they do, like what will be the impact there? Because the economy is normalizing, like inflation is somewhat down, but oil prices are going back up again. The labor market seems maybe misbalanced again. And so I think I just worry that they'll go a little bit too far, and that could be damaging.
Yeah, it's like a temporary soft landing.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you agree with the statement that it's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't think we have seen anything other than capitalism. Like you could point to socialism in the USSR or whatever. But I think that capitalism is super ingrained. Like the end of the capitalism would be the end of the world, right? Yeah.
Interesting.
So, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a beast no one can tame.
Yeah. No, which is sad.
Yeah, totally. Okay, I'm curious if you can explain to me, and I'm sure this could be like a thesis on its own, but why do recessions happen, and then why do you think that we're so obsessed with them, or at least talking about them?
Yeah, I mean, so the NBER, the National Bureau of Economic Research, NBER, they are the group that decide when recessions happen, and they look at a bunch of metrics like payroll data, unemployment's on there, income levels, all of these different things, and they say, okay, like all of these things have contracted, therefore we've been in a recession for 6 months. Like it's very lagged. Yeah. But I think like the reason that we're obsessed with recessions is mostly semantics. So when people feel like they're in a tough economic situation, if we're in a recession, that feels a little bit better, right? Like, it's not your fault that you're kind of not having a great time. So I think that's like why we focus on recessions and can sometimes call out recessions when there isn't one. Like, Bloomberg published this piece yesterday that was like, we're still headed to a recession. And it's like, there's almost like this desire, I think, to have one. And a lot of people will be like, oh, well, it's the business cycles, right? So like every boom time has to have a bust.
Yeah.
Like, things that go up have to go down. And it's like, well, maybe not, right? And like, this is one of my most unpopular opinions. People hate this opinion. But like, I do think there's a world where business cycles flatline, right? Like, I do think that we are somewhat in a post-growth world in the United States, where we've kind of, AI could supersede all that, but we have achieved a lot industrially. Like, we have a lot of email jobs that kind of aren't real now, and so it's like growth levels are capped to a certain extent. And so I think that could be a thing that flatlines business cycles and therefore flatlines recessions. But I do think there's a semantic attachment to the idea of a recession.
Interesting.
Yeah.
As someone who really found your vibe session theory to be really interesting and helpful, why do you think that it was met with criticism?
Oh, I mean, for the same reason I was just talking about. Like, I came out and I was like, hey, everybody, things are good. You're just feeling bad. And like, I wish I had done that differently. Because that can feel pretty bad. Like, somebody is like, oh, well, your economic situation is fine. Like, you just don't feel very good. And so the vibe session is this idea that there's a gap between consumer sentiment and underlying economic data. So people are feeling super bad, but the economic data is relatively okay. And so that was the whole thesis of the vibe session. And I was getting these death threats, like, people just being like, you're an idiot and I hate you and I'm going to kill you. Mostly because I wasn't recognizing, their economic situation. I was like, well, things are fine. You're just not feeling very good. And so that's why people got mad, is because I wasn't gentle enough probably with it. And I didn't recognize some true pains of the economy, like real wages being stagnant. Now student loan payments are starting back up. There's a lot of fiscal stagnation too, to a certain extent. So I think that I could have done a better job with that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I was curious if that criticism came mostly from like inside the economics world or outside from just like everyday people.
Outside, yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Inside, there was a lot of positive feedback. It's like changed my life, the feedback that I've gotten from it. But yeah, it was mostly people from Twitter being pretty upset at me.
Totally.
And which is fine. Like, oftentimes, and this is something I just had to realize from doing social media for now 2 years, is that people have a lot of emotions and you're a vector for their emotions. Like, it's never really about you. And so you have to remove yourself from that. You're just like a face on a screen. So yeah, that's, I think, what happened is people were like, I'm going to use this girl as a conduit for my economic pain. Yeah.
Lucky you.
Lucky me. Yeah. Yeah. It's awesome. I love it. So it makes me feel good.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I'm so sorry. That's brutal.
It's okay.
What do you think the most misunderstood thing is about economics?
I mean, I think a lot of people, as I said earlier, feel like they don't understand it. And I think a lot of that is just the jargon behind it. So I think the most misunderstood thing is that people think that that they can't understand it. Like, it doesn't apply to them, that they have to like have a PhD or like study really hard to be able to understand certain aspects of it. And I don't think so, right? Like, I think that part of the reason the vibe session thing did well is because I was explaining things in sort of, normal terms and saying things in a normal way. And so I think that's the biggest thing about economics, is people feel like they don't know, but they do.
Okay, so this next coffee is Guatemalan coffee from a roaster called Sweet Bloom. This is our second Denver roaster. They're super fun. I really like, they do a lot of cool illustrations on their bag designs too.
Yeah, I like that.
So yeah, let me know.
Bubba? Like the gum?
Yeah.
Oh, sick.
Yeah. There's kind of no wrong answers with like coffee tasting. So I like when people throw out kind of like
Oh, like what it tastes like to them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because like sometimes people will pull like really niche things. Do you need a napkin? I can go grab one if you want.
No, it's okay.
Are you sure?
Just don't look over here. I don't know
You're
why
totally
it's dripping
fine.
like this.
Oh my gosh, you're good. You're good. But yeah, sometimes people will throw in like weird kind of like Hubba Bubba bubble gum or whatever.
Oh, I'm making a mess. I'm sorry.
It's all good. We'll cut it out.
No, it's fine. It makes you more human, you know?
Exactly.
I just don't know why it's like dripping all over me.
Yeah. I can go run and grab a napkin.
Is Charlie
seriously.
your cat?
Charlie's my dog.
Oh, okay.
So she's a husky pit bull German shepherd
Oh,
mix.
fine. That's a lot of dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's just a big mutt. She looks just like a husky though,
Yeah.
honestly. So,
Yeah, I have a dog named Moo.
Moo?
Yeah.
I was going to ask you what your dog's name was.
Moo, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she's the best.
How old is she?
She's now 3.5. Yeah.
That's crazy. That's
I
almost
know.
exactly Charlie too.
Really?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
did you get her during the pandemic?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah, like a
nice.
little bit after. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
How did you end up with Moo?
So my friend Doug wanted to go to the animal shelter, and I was like, okay, like I'll come along. And I saw her. I wasn't planning on getting a dog because I travel a lot, and I was like,
Yeah.
irresponsible, bad move. And I just saw her, and she was sitting on this little bed, and like they'd given them cardboard to play with. It was awful.
Yeah.
And so I looked in there, and I was like, that's my dog. I have to have that dog. Like that is my soulmate dog. And so I went back the next day, and like we hung out for a little bit, and I took her home. Yeah, and
That's
she's been
awesome.
like by my side ever since. Yeah, I've been traveling a bunch the past few months, and I was finally home for like a week last week, and like she was so mad at me. She was like, "Where have you been?" You know,
You can't leave me
I
again.
know, because I work from home.
Yeah.
And so she's like, we're always together, and that creates a little bit of separation.
Totally.
Anxiety.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
I'll bring Charlie to the office sometimes because
Yeah.
she just like same thing. It's like does
Yeah.
not want to leave. So.
Yeah, it's really nice. But
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
that's awesome.
She's super well trained too.
What's her personality like?
She's super chill.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's so she's a boxer pit mix.
Okay.
And she had a lot of energy when she was a puppy, like when she was a little bit younger, but she's mellowed out quite a bit. And so she hates walks, honestly. We went on a hike, and like I had to carry her
Oh
for
my
some of it
gosh.
because she likes a life of leisure, which is kind of funny. Like we're so similar. I sound crazy right now, but like me and my dog are so similar in so many ways. But I'm always going, like I mountain bike, I do all these extreme sports, and then my dog is like, I don't even like walking.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
It's
Yeah,
like, just
yeah.
I want to go potty outside and
she just
nothing
likes
else.
cuddles. Like she likes to just hang out and like
That's so
yeah,
sweet,
she's
though.
the best.
It's hard not to just
I
like fall in
know.
love with that.
Yeah,
That's
she's
awesome.
I really yeah. Is Charlie pretty energetic?
It's really funny. She comes in waves.
Yeah.
So she was super chill when I like went to the shelter to pick her up.
Yeah.
Literally just laid in a puddle on the floor.
Aw.
And I was like, well, I can't leave you here.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
all the other dogs came in and were, like,
Yeah, like
running up and
freaking
down.
out, yeah.
And she came in and just like sat on the floor, and I was like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
I can't take you or
Yeah.
can't leave you here. So but yeah, she gets like the zoomies randomly. So we'll be like walking, and she'll be totally chill, and then she'll like try to scare you, so just like flip around and be like, ah.
Oh, that's so cute.
Yeah, so it's pretty funny. She gets the zoomies when we go to like the beach too. Like
Yeah.
she'll hit the sand and like feel it in her toes and just like have to like run
Aw,
around.
Yeah,
but,
she's like, this is too much.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. That's amazing.
yeah, but like 90% of the time it's like similar.
Yeah, just chill.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like not seeking anything beyond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just hanging out.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
big time. Okay, so this next set of questions, I'm curious to talk to you a little bit about housing. Before we do you have thoughts on this coffee?
It's good. I mean, it like dripped all over my face.
Besides messy.
I think I like the first one more.
Yeah.
This one, I don't like the lingering taste as much.
Like that mouthfeel.
Yeah. Do you know what it's called in wine tasting? There's like a coquette. There's something
I
where
should
like
know.
when you drink wine, the amount of time that it stays with you, it's like it's in 3 seconds. So it's like one coquet, I'm saying the word wrong, is 3 seconds. And I feel like this has a long linger time.
Yeah, totally.
I don't like that as much, yeah.
Okay, so this is so funny. People like assume that I know wine just because coffee and wine, like tasting stuff. I'm like could not know less about wine. It's like white or red.
Yeah.
So I probably should like do a wine tasting and learn some of those things because it would probably translate.
Yeah,
well,
when I was in France, like the people I was with were super into wine.
Yeah.
And so I learned a lot about wine.
That's
like
really
how
cool.
you swirl it and all that stuff.
Like check the viscosity and stuff. That's
and
super cool.
the cocaine or whatever it's called. Yeah.
Cocaine? No.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Okay, questions about housing. Why do you think the American dream has stuck around for so long? Like, why are we obsessed with owning a house here?
Oh God. Okay. Wow. Yeah. So like the reason that we're obsessed with owning a house is because it's our wealth, right? So like the bottom 50% of Americans, almost all of their wealth is tied into their home. And if you look at the top 10% or the top 1%, a lot of their wealth is tied into businesses or equity. And so it's either like corporate ownership or owning stocks. And so for most Americans, the path to financial freedom is home ownership. And so like that's why the American dream has stuck around, is because people have this idea in their mind, and it's been true for a while, or up until now, I guess, is that like homes will always go up in price.
Yeah.
And so people are like, oh, that'll be my asset. Like I'll have money if I get a house. And I think that also there is a desire to have a space for yourself too.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why it's stuck around so long, is that's just like it, like that's the dream.
Yeah, totally. No, that makes a lot of sense. Do you feel like it's dissimilar other places? Like, do you feel like people put the same emphasis on owning a home?
I don't think so. Like, I don't think you see it in Europe as much, mostly because they're a little bit more chill than we are here.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, in Australia, like, you'll see similar stuff. Canada, you see similar stuff in the developed nations. And so, but I think in the United States, it's very particular because it's sort of like a marker of achievement is when you get that house and you get that, fence or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think it's becoming almost impossible to achieve.
Yeah. I know there's kind of like endless memes about like people waiting for the housing market to crash, specifically like young millennials, for their time to buy. Is that even a reality anymore? Is that ship kind of sailed?
I mean, like the housing market could always crash, right? I think that what's really interesting about the housing market right now is like, so we talked about the Fed earlier. The Fed has raised rates a lot. We haven't seen it really impact the economy, but we've seen it, impact mortgage rates. So mortgage rates are at 7-ish%, and they were at 2%.
Yeah.
And so there's been a lot of people, like if you got a house in 2020, you're locked in 2% mortgage, like you're clean, you're golden. And the next generation who is trying to get a home is now dealing with not only sky high housing prices, but also sky high mortgage rates. And so you have 38 million people, mostly boomers, who have no mortgage. Like they own they own their home outright, right? Like they don't have to pay anything. And so I think that's the issue, is that the dynamics are so skewed right now, where you have people who are locked in 2%. You have people who have no mortgage at all, and then you have people who are dealing with like 7% rates, right? And home prices are starting to go down. Like in Denver, they're going down a little bit. In a lot of major metro areas, they're going down a little bit. But also part of the issue is that we're not building enough homes, and so we're, for the first time ever, build to rent, so like apartment buildings, have surpassed built to sale. So we're just not building these single family homes that people are wanting, which is also creating the supply demand misbalance.
Yeah. I actually have a question for you about like the built for sale versus built for rent. Can you explain like why that's so concerning, and also who's building these like built for rent units? Yeah,
I mean, it's so concerning. Well, like there's a couple of views on it. Like some people will say like we need more apartment buildings because we need multifamily, like places where people can go, and like if you have a single family home, that for one family versus a apartment building for many families, right? Like this one, you can build way more apartment buildings, house way more people. So we should build more apartment buildings. And so like that's one thing that people will say like with why build to rent is good. But the desire is for homes, right? Like everyone having their little homes.
Yeah.
And so, the people that are building these are home builders. But a lot of private equity investors have made their way into the apartment complex, also into nursing homes and mobile home parks, which is terrible.
Yeah, that's concerning.
It's really concerning. Yeah, the nursing home the nursing homes are about to lose federal funding, and then also a lot of them have been taken over by private equity, and private equity comes in, guts the place, and then leaves, right, and sells it for a profit.
Right.
And so I think that's also part of the issue that we're seeing in the housing market is that there's this desire to make a lot of money, and that is at the expense of people who want to live.
Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to talking about like these people who own their homes outright, do you feel like we just have to kind of wait for boomers to die off to like have some like things stabilize in the housing market?
Yeah, maybe. But I think there's also a need for boomers to downsize. So a lot of them are rattling around in a big old house, just two of them, or one, even. And I think that like if you saw the boomers go to tinier houses or apartment complexes or condominiums, like that might be good. But and then that way like a small family could move into that house, right? So I think it's just like we need to see the demographics of home ownership shift. It's not that they have to go like die because they're never going to die like at this point. But yeah, I think that's the thing that we have to watch out for is like how do we see this shift begin to happen?
Yeah, totally. Why do you think that people aren't downsizing? Like my folks are in this bucket as well.
Yeah, just rattling around. It's because if you own your home outright, solid, no worries, 2% rate, awesome. Mm-hmm. Like, and I think a lot of them bought their homes when they were really not expensive, right? I think my family bought our house for $250, and now it's like north of $600 just because they bought it 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's also the thing is like it'll be a huge cash inflow, and it's like, am I ready for that too? Yeah. And like where do you go? Right? Yeah,
right. I guess it's probably more expensive for them to leave than to stay.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay, I have a policy. A policy thing to get your thoughts on. Nobody can get a second home until everyone has a first home.
Yeah, or a boat.
I like that.
I think that, so part of the thing with homes is, and I get this comment a lot, is people will be like, there's houses, just move to the middle of Nebraska. And it's like, okay. People want to live in certain areas and like have certain things around them. My hot take on this is like, it's not even that people who want a second home shouldn't have it. I think that like we need to have more mixed use zoning laws, and so like the suburbs, I think that if you made them more residential and commercial, like you had coffee shops within the suburbs, like that could be an opportunity for you, or like a gym or like a child care center, like that would be more beneficial. And then that way we wouldn't have people driving all over the place, like they could walk more, and maybe we could turn all these parking lots into housing, right? So I think if we just made cities more walkable and we made public transit or had more options for public transit, like that could be a way that we eventually build more housing. Is how do we design our cities better? That way we're not giving up all this space to empty parking lots. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nobody wants that.
Nobody wants. Well,
I guess
a lot of people do.
That's not true. Yeah. Technically.
I talk about cars a lot because I'm a big cyclist. And I always get people in my comments being like, "But I need my Ford F-250 to go to Costco." It's like, okay.
Well, maybe not though. There's a really good subreddit called Fuck Cars.
No, yeah. I'm familiar.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. You're like moderator, actually. Yeah. I love that one though. It's speaking of cars, it's so funny. I've been working on importing this like Japanese pickup truck.
The little tiny one?
Yeah.
It's so cute.
Yeah. So I'm gonna be using that and try to convert it into a coffee truck at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so funny. Like I got turned on to those partially because that subreddit, and they were like, "This is the same bed size as like awesome. A Ford F-150."
Well, and so farmers, like rural America, is like, we need smaller trucks,
right?
And so they're importing those same trucks that you're importing because they're like, I can't have this giant 2 F-50. It's like killing my plants or whatever,
right?
And so that's the issue too, is that car designers are designing for the wrong group of people, in my opinion.
Totally. Yeah. No, I completely agree. Okay, I have a question for you about subprime mortgages and kind of the 2008 crisis. Like, did anything happen on the regulatory side that like gives us confidence that that's not going to happen again? Like, are we really safe from that whole financial bubble collapsing again?
So like with 2008, it was just a lot of mortgages, and it was a lot of subprime mortgages and then a lot of prime mortgages too. But the issue was that you were bundling them all together. And so when those subprime mortgages began to fail and like people stopped paying them back, like all the assets were tainted and everything began to crash. And there was just also really bad practices by like Lehman and the different banks, Bear Stearns. And so I think that a lot of that has been insulated, and that lending standards have tightened quite a bit, especially over the past 15 years. Like you just don't see banks lending out like they used to. So I think that is something that we're safe for. But as we saw with Silicon Valley Bank, we're not totally safe from the collapse of certain parts of the financial system.
Yeah, big time. That was a spooky one.
Yeah. And it didn't need to be so spooky.
Yeah.
Because they actually lobbied, there's a 2018 bipartisan law that these mid-sized banks, so 100 billion to 250 billion, didn't have to follow the same rules as a Goldman Sachs or a Wells Fargo. And so they were just skirting by without any hedges in place, without any regulatory frameworks. And so I think that's the thing. And now they're paying very close attention to banks, because banks are, government entities, right? Like they are trusted by the government to issue government money. And so they should follow government regulations. And I think people kind of woke up to that,
Is it boutique banks? Is that like what they would be called under like that regulation or former lack of regulation?
Yeah, like small to mid-sized banks.
Okay, nice. Okay, I am really curious to get your thoughts on, I've kind of heard both sides of this kind of, I guess it was like a concerning headline, but real estate and like specifically like housing being bought up by like a bunch of private equity or investment firms. Is this like a real concern? Like, is this a dark future we're going to live in, or is it like just an overblown headline?
I think when we talk about private equity in general, it can get overblown just because it's like such a spooky industry and the people can be so vulture-like. But I do think it's something to pay attention to. Like there was a slide from Blackstone that was talking about like how it's really good for us that housing prices are going up so much. Like we're going to make a bunch of money for you investors. And so I think it's just something to watch out for, is like having investors come in and snap up real estate and then go out. Like my apartment complex just switched ownership, and I was trying to get Wi-Fi installed because I just moved and I couldn't get a hold of anybody for like 3 days. And so I think it's just like things like that where like these firms will come in. Like this firm is from Texas, owning this apartment complex. I don't live in Texas. And so it's just like, I think it's like that sort of thing too. It's just these apartment complexes are owned by gigantic firms that are not even in the States. And I don't think that from a relative level perspective, like are investors snapping up a bunch of real estate, not any more than they already have been, but it's something to watch out for.
What about like single family homes? I heard that there was like a bunch of, like, I think BlackRock was the one that I saw a lot. Is that like, is that something that's concerning to you, or is it like
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I think it's just we already have such a deep housing crisis. Like we're 3 million units short of homes. And we have we're in Los Angeles right now, and if you go outside, like you see the housing crisis. Like you see people who do not have homes to stay in on the streets. And I think it's really concerning, both from a societal perspective, from a financial perspective too.
Interesting. Okay, this is something that my TikTok algorithm is just like serving me left, right, and center. So I want to get your thoughts on it. Do landlords provide service or value?
Oh.
Also, we can skip this if you don't want to get in hot water.
I think okay. So my take on landlords is that I believe that renting is really harmful. I think that it should be just like mortgages. I think that you should have equity in your apartment complex, which is very tough to achieve. But, people rent for so many years. Like I'm 26. I've been renting my whole life since I left my parents' house. Like if I had a house, I'd be building equity in a house. And so I think that it's not that landlords are providing a service, yes. But I do think there's an opportunity to give renters a chance to build ownership, because that's how you see wealth begin to form. And I think that landlords can be really extractive, because you're paying somebody to live here and you get literally no benefit other than owning a house. And then also the tax code for homeowners is very beneficial, right? Like you get to write stuff off, you get to write your mortgage payments off. You don't get to do that with rent. And so I think it just really puts pressure on these people that probably need more of a boost than homeowners do. And so that's what I'd say about the landlord situation, is that there should not be landlords.
Like a little more exploitative than it should be for us.
Totally.
So okay, I'm curious if there's any like states or cities in the U.S. that you see doing like housing well in this day and age? Specifically, like, I don't know. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, what cities or states are doing things well?
Minnesota is doing a good job. Like, they are building a bunch of housing, and they're also creating subsidies so people can get into homes and have access to different apartment complexes. So I'd say they're doing a really good job. It's just like the big question is, can they build? So they did a lot of reforming around their zoning laws and made it so they can build. And so I think Minnesota is a good example of a state that's doing a good job.
And bikeable.
Yeah. Just very cold in the winter. Yeah.
Big time. You got to get those like mitts attached to your back. This is a roaster from your neck of the woods, New York City.
Okay.
Specifically Brooklyn, called Say, S-E-Y, and this is a Honduras coffee.
Okay.
So feel free if you want to go ahead and pop it open or take a look. Take a look at the bag, and I can get the coffee going.
Okay, cool. I'll look at the bag. I get nervous opening up those canisters.
These are all yours, by the way. So I'll send them back with you, or if you don't
cool.
have room, I'll mail them to you.
Oh,
so
sick! Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they have a couple of cool cafes too. If you are in Brooklyn, definitely check them out.
Oh, but they are buying beans from California.
Maybe is that one? Say it's
San Vicente, right?
It might be a different. Like it might be San Vicente in Honduras. Because there's like a bunch of ones that are confusing because there's like Santa Barbara. Like there's a lot of coffees that come from Santa Barbara that aren't California Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
So it's like kind of funky, but awesome. So yeah, let me know what you think of this one. I'm a big fan of these guys. I found them. My sister and my brother used to live on the East Coast, so these were a good find when I was over there.
Yeah, this is nice. It's really smooth. Yeah, this is a good one.
A little lighter.
Yeah, like this one was, I was like, jeez. Hello.
Yeah,
this is nice.
Awesome. Cool. Well, my next set of questions are actually about biking.
No way.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I never get asked about that.
No, I was super stoked to hear that you took that trip, and so I was like,
cool.
oh my gosh! And like, I saw you have a new Instagram for all of your biking stuff, which is super cool.
Wow. Yeah. I would love to talk about biking.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, how did you get into biking?
Oh man, I've been biking. So I used to live in LA. And I didn't drive here. I biked around. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
how
dangerous.
Long have you lived here?
I just moved here in like July.
Okay, so but you're familiar with like the traffic.
Yes. Oh yeah, big time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I biked around, and so I just used it for commuting, and then I moved and was still like biking around via commuting and really enjoyed it and had a lot of fun. Like I ran in college, like ran for my university.
Nice.
But like never really biked, just for commuting.
Mm-hmm.
And then in May I started hanging out with some people, and they're like, we're doing this 118-mile race, like, do you want to do it? And I was like, sick. Yeah, sure. And so I started getting really into road biking, and like I was doing 300-mile weeks, and like really like that's just how I am, like I'll extreme.
Yeah.
And so I really became obsessed with it, and like did a bunch of races this summer. And then recently got into mountain biking too, and have done gravel rides. And so it's only been not that long, but I've been riding for a while, just not competitively.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been really, I love it. Yeah, it's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love hearing that.
Yeah.
I'm a endurance sport fan as well, but not. I'm like really not good at biking.
Okay.
Like I biked here. I've used my bike to commute, just because it's super close.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something that I'm like, at some point I really want to get into it more.
Are you a runner?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just one of those things where I'm like, there's so many parallels, and also I'm like, I just turned 30 this year, so I'm like, I feel like it's like I need to get into biking just because it's what you're supposed to do when you turn 30.
When you age.
Exactly.
No, it's awesome, and I still run too. So like,
nice.
I'll do a lot of zone 2 runs, like slow. And that helps with biking as well. And then I like do yoga, and I lift. Like I did a lot of powerlifting. So I think it's just like the more sports that you can do, the better, versus just like one.
Yeah.
Because it builds resilience in your body.
Absolutely. There's so many like weird little tendons and muscles that, especially running, I feel like that's the one where I really notice it if I haven't run in a while. Yeah. Do you remember your first bike?
Well, like when I was little, or
Yeah, I guess whatever comes to mind.
So, I mean, I think my first like real bike, I got this felt. So after I graduated high school, I ran all throughout high school, and I was like, geez, like what do I do now, right? Like I had lost this, and I hadn't started running for university yet. And so I got this felt bike. My dad's best friend gave me, I think it was like $500 for a graduation present.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going to buy a bike. And so I went out and I got this felt bike, and I did a triathlon with it. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah, like just really spent the whole summer
nice
riding it around, and it came to school with me. And yeah, it was this blue and black bike. And I took it to LA, actually, and that's what I rode around in LA.
Nice.
And one morning I got my first flat on it, and it was really, really scary. But that was my first bike, yeah.
That's
I
super
really
cool.
like it, yeah. Now I have 4.
Oh, nice.
I have 4 bikes now.
They add up quick, I feel
know,
like.
yeah.
Because you need one for kind of each type of riding and stuff.
Like I have my commuter, and then I have my mountain bike, and then I have my road bike, and then I have my gravel bike.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Which do you have a favorite right now?
My road bike is really nice. I got it off Facebook Marketplace. It's a Specialized SL7 Tarmac, and so it's like one of the best road bikes on the market. And the guy I got it from works for Specialized.
Oh, sick.
And so like he's the best, and it just became like it's an awesome bike. It is maybe 11 pounds, and so you're just zooming.
That's insane.
I really have enjoyed mountain biking a lot. Like I actually went over the handlebars Thursday. Like
oh,
so
wow.
Just a few days ago. Yeah.
Everything okay?
Yeah, everything's pretty good. But I really like mountain biking because I also rock climb a little, and so with mountain biking, like you get to analyze what you're doing versus road biking. You kind of zoom ahead, similar with road running.
Yeah.
But if you're trail running or if you're mountain biking, like you have to be really aware of the path that
your
you're
brain
going.
is like firing on all cylinders.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's really challenging.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I would love to hear kind of a little bit more about your trip from France. I read your piece that you wrote about kind of your lessons from it, which was really awesome.
Thanks.
Honestly, like really unexpected kind of your takeaways. Like I was like, oh my gosh, that's so sweet, like so wholesome.
No, thanks,
do you have anything that you didn't get to share in that piece that you're like wanted to share with people?
Yeah, I mean, in the piece, I was with these like 40 to 60-year-olds, and there was me, so I'm 26, and like just huge age gap. And at first I was kind of nervous, but it ended up being so awesome because like I work alone, as you do, and when you work alone and you have your own business, it's awesome because you have a lot of freedom, but you don't have a lot of mentorship. And so for me, like I was able to ask these people like all sorts of questions about, you know, like what does it mean to fall in love and like all this stuff, and then like how do I, you know, make sure that I'm balancing work and life, and because I was answering emails and they were like, none of that will matter, like stop, like you know, just be here now. And so the trip was really special for me because I got to connect with these people and like felt really loved and like cared for, and like felt like I was able to ask these questions that I normally just don't get to ask, just because of the isolation that happens with working alone.
Totally.
So I think that was like the most special thing.
Yeah. Do you have like a highlight of like the scenery or things that you saw while you're there?
Oh, it was beautiful. Like we were in the south of France, so the countryside in Provence, and me and one guy like went on this extra ride because there was a certain amount that we had to bike every day, and then you could do extras, and of course like I was always doing extras. But we went into this like canyon, and it felt like something from a storybook. Like I'd never seen anything like it in my whole life. Like there was all these rocks all around you, and like the road, right? Like so this road was built through the canyon, and we were just riding along it. And what was really nice about being in the countryside is that there weren't a lot of cars, but the roads were so well maintained. It just felt like bike paths.
Oh, that's
everywhere.
Awesome.
It was highly recommend. It's all the routes are on my Strava if you ever want to go. Yeah.
Okay, sick.
Yeah.
That would be sweet. So I've never done any sort of like bike trip or like even like a running trip like that, but it sounds awesome.
Yeah, this was like my first time ever leaving the country.
Yeah.
And then it was also like my first vacation in a really long time.
Totally.
And I think it was super nice to do it that way. Yeah, you have a bug like flying around you.
I was gonna say, where does this bug come from? I don't understand how I got in here. But.
Yeah, with dedication.
Wants to be in the soundproof room.
Yeah.
What was your process of training, getting ready for that trip like?
Oh, it was pretty chill. Like I trained for this 118-mile race, and then I did like a 70-mile race a few weeks after that, and then had really gotten into mountain biking. So it wasn't super hard riding. It wasn't super hard riding the first couple of days. And then this guy named Simon, he is like an incredible biker.
Yeah.
Like just a monster. He's in his 60s, I think, and an orthopedic surgeon.
Oh, sick.
And he started just like every day just hammering it. And I was like, okay, cool. Like I'll keep up with you.
Yeah.
But he would drop me. And there was this one, like I think my favorite memory from the trip is we had a van, just in case, like similar to Tour de France.
Yeah, yeah.
And there was a van, and he was drafting off the van. So the van was going probably like 60 kilometers an hour, like flying.
That's
right?
crazy.
And he was drafting off it, and I was like a little bit far back because I couldn't keep up.
Yeah.
And just like watching him weave down the side of a mountain, like trailing this van who was going the speed limit was like the coolest thing ever. It was just, and like the food was it was awesome.
Oh, that's so fun. Did you have any days that weren't bike trip related, or like did you have a day on either end?
So I was in DC the day before doing a conference, and then the day after I biked at home. So no, not really. Like there was like we got there, we went for a little bike ride, and then the day that we left to go to the train station to get back to the airport, we did a little bike ride too. So
okay. Nice.
all the days were biking.
Yeah, so no rest on the legs.
No, and I was feeling it by the end for sure.
Yeah,
because it was hard riding.
Yeah, mountain roads, like that's a lot.
Yeah, and like the elevation, like we were doing 4,000 to 5,000 feet a day. Yeah, which is a lot.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of climbing and a lot of time in the saddle.
Yeah, big time. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Do you find that biking is like a meditative thing for you, or is it like a social thing, or both?
I think mostly meditative still. Like I have a crew that I bike with back home. That's like they're really special to me and really important. But like if I'm stuck on something, like I'll go ride around usually. So I would say that it does both for me. Yeah.
Without like doxing yourself, what are your favorite rides to do like back home in New York?
There's a mountain that I really like to go up. Yeah.
Oh really?
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
That's sick. Awesome. Okay. Do you have a dream bike trip that like now that you've done one that you're like, oh man, I want to go do this?
Me and my friend were talking about going to Majorca. And doing some riding around there because it's like world-class riding. So I think that'll be next. Going around there. But my goal now is to like bike everywhere that I can. That'll be the way that I travel, I think.
Yeah.
So that's my goal. It's just like, because the cool thing about that is that Strava, right? So you can see everybody's routes on Strava and pick up stuff there. And then also what's nice is like I'll post that I'm in certain cities and people will be like, come ride.
Oh, cool.
And so yeah, it's nice.
That's super fun. I love that. Have you ever been bike packing?
No, I really want to though.
Same.
Yeah. It seems really cool.
I think that would be like my first trip that I would do because I don't think I like the road mountain stuff. I don't think I would hold up. My legs are just like not conditioned for it. So yeah.
One of my friends is like really into bike packing. And
really?
It's sick. Yeah, it's really cool. And then a lot of people that I follow on Instagram like bike pack across Europe, and it just seems like really fun.
Yeah,
big
really
time. Cool stuff.
You can just cover so much ground too, which I love backpacking, but there's times when I'm like, it would be nice to be able to like go at like a running pace even.
Yeah, like a little faster.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, if you could give me like an over and an underrated bike component, like where should people like skimp and where should people like really ball out?
I mean, I think that I'm a fan of electronic shifting. I think that's pretty cool and like a cool thing that they've developed. So like versus mechanical shifting.
How does that work? I've never ridden a bike that had that. Yeah,
it's Bluetooth. So
wait,
like,
seriously?
Yeah, you have a shifter on the back of the bike, and then the shifters are in the front. So like the thing that controls it is in the back of the bike, and then the shifters are in the front of the bike.
Yeah.
So rather than being mechanical, it's electronic. I think that's pretty neat.
Huh.
Yeah, and then tubeless tires, big fan.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was running tubes and I got 3 flats in one ride, and then I was like, okay, this is silly, and so I went tubeless on everything.
Is it a harder ride?
On tubeless?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
It actually feels squishier because the tubeless tires have liquid in them.
Oh, really?
Or like this sort of like gooey stuff.
Okay.
And so it doesn't feel any harder or easier. I think it feels a little smoother.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's super interesting. I would not have guessed any electric components just because like I feel like at least all the bike people I've been around are like very
purist.
much. Yeah, or like fix it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never ridden. That sounds like a way
nice.
different experience. Is it smooth? Like the changing gears?
I get the people who are like, I don't like it. But I feel like you can become more the bike when it's electronic.
Yeah.
It just feels less mechanical. It is. And so I think that's why I like it, is you just feel so much more connected to the bike. Yeah.
That's super cool.
That might be a hot take, but yeah.
No, I like it though. I mean, you're kind of making me want to invest more in my bike. It's just been it needs some work, to say the least.
Really?
Yeah. It was like my commuting bike. So I used to live in the South Bay, and that was like my commute to work was on my little bike. And then I just have not like done enough maintenance with it, so it's starting to show its age a bit. It needs some love.
Yeah, you take it into the shop too.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe I need to upgrade to some electric shifters. That would be sick.
It's nice.
I lost track of. Oh, you said you've been doing mountain biking. So was it road biking and then you transitioned into mountain biking? What's I guess I'm terrified of mountain biking. I've been quite a few times just because I grew up in Idaho and it's like big there.
Cool, yeah.
But like the downhill stuff that's like on ski resorts, like horrifying.
I don't do that.
No?
No, I just do like almost like cross country mountain biking.
Okay.
So we do have a downhill section on this trail that we'll go to a lot. And I'm pretty careful. I haven't been doing it that long, like a month and a half.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, not long. And
cool.
but I really like it from a technical perspective, but the learning curve is massive. And so I ride with like really good riders. Like they're so good. And I just tried to keep up with them, but it's definitely scary. Like I went over the handlebars, so I was going through a rock garden, and like my friend Zach was in front of me, and he went fine, and I was like, oh cool, like nothing's ahead. I couldn't see.
Yeah.
And then it went like this, and I was like, oh, there's a bunch of rocks right there, and I hit my front brake, and I went right over.
Yeah.
And so like the margin for error on the mountain bike is so small.
Right.
Because like you either truck through stuff or you get off the bike.
Right. Yeah.
And so yeah.
That was, I think, one of the hardest things I had a tough time with is like, especially going from a road bike where you're so small, narrow, and light to like this like, you know, big honking thing.
Yeah.
How did you find that transition?
It was tough. I mean, like so Zach has been like my mountain bike guru, and like the first time that he took me to the mountain, I was freaking out. Like I was like, I don't want to run over these rocks. Like I could fall. Like I need to avoid all the rocks. And it was really difficult, and I was super freaked out. But like we just practiced. Like we have this loop called baby loop, and I just did it. Like we did it 4 or 5 times that first day. Yeah. And so it was definitely a tough transition, but it makes you a better cyclist because you are so much aware of like your body on the bike and like your positioning and stuff. And so I found the transfer to road biking to be really beneficial. And you're also becoming like a better climber, because we do like a lot of uphill. So
big time. I know you mentioned you used to run in college. What was your event?
5K, 10K. Yeah.
Oh wow, cool. That's awesome. Do you normally do like that distance still, or do you do more long distance stuff?
So I just got back into running. So like running in college broke me a little bit, and so I had to take a little bit of a break. But now I just do like 6 or 7 miles maybe. 3 times a week.
Cool.
So,
I mean, that's a good amount. So you're doing more than I am right now.
Really?
So,
yeah.
I've been really out of the loop lately.
It's okay.
So,
that's like life, you know.
Yeah. I got COVID right before my marathon, and so I just like really killed my like, and I was like, I need to get back out there again. Yeah. But there's a bunch of new trails out here, which is cool. So,
LA has a lot of good mountain biking, a lot of good running.
Yeah, big time. I know you mentioned that you did at least one triathlon. Have you ever wanted to do another?
No. I don't really like swimming. Yeah. I really like, similar to what you're talking about with bike packing, like I like endurance. Like I'm a big endurance person. Like I like to go far. Like we did a bunch of 100-milers over this summer. Yeah. And so I think that the next thing I want to do is more a focus on how far can I go. There's this race called the Belgian Waffle Ride. Okay. It's in a few weeks. I'm not going to do it because I'm not ready in terms of mountain biking skills, but you bike like 150 miles, and I think it's in Idaho. Like you go through Wyoming, Idaho, and Kansas. I don't know if that's right. Wow. It feels wrong.
Kansas definitely would be pretty far.
Yeah, I don't think those
Idaho,
states.
Wyoming, though, those are close together.
They are, okay. Yeah, you go through 3 states.
Okay.
Maybe Utah.
Okay, yeah, that would make sense.
And then, So I think that sort of thing would be fun. It's just like, how long can you push it for?
Dang, that's wild. Yeah, I guess I don't really know a lot of the bike races. I know like a lot of the running endurance stuff. And I have a friend who's like really into it and will do these crazy races. But
did he go to Chamois? Okay.
No, he does. There's this thing called the Boise Trail thing, but basically it's like you run or bike or mountain bike all of the trails in like the Boise National Forest, which is like there's a ton. There's like hundreds of them.
Is it Boise?
Boise, yeah.
Boise?
Yeah, people always say Boise.
I say Boise.
Yeah, but it's
Boise?
B-O-Y, like Boise is like the right way to
Boise.
say it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
People
the capital.
Yeah, well, yeah. It used to not be,
Boise.
but yeah, used to be.
It's not Boise.
Yeah,
Boise.
Boise.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They have like shirts at like a lot of the shops down there that say Boise.
I have never known that. That's really good to know.
Yeah.
Fun fact. Okay, got it.
Yeah. It's an interesting place. Do you ever think about owning a bike shop?
Oh gosh, no.
Really?
Yeah, the margins are so thin.
Yeah.
Like I have friends, a lot of friends who work in the bike industry, and they just seem to be having a blast. But for me, like, I don't think I could do that right now. Yeah,
totally.
It seems fun. I thought about owning a library.
Oh, really?
Yeah, not a bike shop.
Nice.
Yeah,
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And last question on biking: why do you think cyclists get so much hate?
Because they're in the way. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's, number one, is poorly designed bike paths where you have to intervene with traffic. And then, a lot of cyclists, myself included, maybe don't pay as much attention to stop signs as we should.
I just learned that that's a thing. I thought you were actually able to like yield.
You are. It's called the Idaho law, actually.
Okay,
like, you
that's
are
what I
able to
thought.
yield, yeah. But drivers are like, you have to follow the same laws I do.
Yeah,
And it's
I'm
like,
really confused by it because that was like in Idaho growing up, it was faster to bike through my neighborhood that I lived in for a while because it's just all stop signs. So you could cruise through all of them. And then I like heard somebody saying like California, that's not legal to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, but it is a law, the Idaho law, where you can cruise through them. But yeah, I think that's like why cyclists get a lot of hate, and then also the goofy yellow outfits, and you just kind of look weird.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think it's such a great sport, and I really wish that people would accept it more. But
It's very freeing. I feel like a little kid when I ride my bike.
yeah, it's awesome.
So fun.
And you can like get most places that you need to go via the bike.
Yeah.
If you just don't have great paths sometimes. Yeah.
Big time.
Like Santa Monica actually has a lot of really good bike paths, but because it's Santa Monica, it's like very scary sometimes.
Yeah, big time. Especially like Santa Monica Boulevard.
I used to bike on that. Yeah,
Did
my
you?
gym was down there.
Oh wait,
so
which gym?
Burn Fitness.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say if it was that's like right across the street from. I'll have to cut this out, but
Oh,
it's like right across the street from my house.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, so you.
Yeah, like literally, if you take, it's like just.
Yeah, it
past-
is. We're on. That's right. It's like a straight shot. Yeah.
Yeah,
nice.
so.
That's a good spot to land.
Yeah. Big
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Where did you live when you were here?
I was in Westwood, so by
Okay.
UCLA.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's perfect then.
I
like
liked
that
it.
spot a
Yeah.
lot.
I was there because my office was on Santa Monica Boulevard and something else.
Okay.
Like right by a chicken shop. But,
Oh, really?
But, yeah,
Nice.
I can't remember the exact address, but so it was like a 15-minute walk, and then I had to start going downtown for work.
Yeah.
The pandemic happened, but yeah.
Dang.
Mhm.
Yeah, I like this area a lot, especially like it feels like it's easy to get to everything from, except for like getting on the east side
Yeah.
after work. But
Yeah, you either pick the west or east side,
Yeah.
and that's it. Yeah,
Exactly.
and you don't visit. Yeah. Yeah.
We can move on to our next coffee, which is
Yours.
my coffee,
Okay.
our coffee, I guess. I always say our when it's just me because I feel like it sounds weird to say.
But you said you had your partner helping you, right?
Yeah, she helps me a lot. She so we used to do do like a little bike coffee cart.
Cute.
Let me go this
Okay.
way. So I built like a little bike cart to tow behind my bike, and we do like pour overs and stuff on the beach.
Fun.
So we used to do that in Santa Cruz. It was a good time. But yeah, she's instrumental too. Honestly, like she takes care of Charlie and stuff all the time while I'm like doing other things. So she's the
That's
best.
sweet. Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so this is a newer coffee that I got in. It's a Kenya Feel free to take a look. We have less fun packaging than everyone else, but it's compostable, which is why it looks less fun. So
lemonade.
Yeah, but this is. Let me know what you think. Any feedback is helpful for me, honestly, because I've been roasting way less time than all of these other people have. So. It's like way more earthy.
Yeah, that's a good word for it. It definitely like lingers on the tongue a little longer than I like particularly. Yeah, it's not as smooth as something I would like.
Yeah.
But I still think it tastes good.
Okay.
Like it's a good bean. It's a good roast.
It's definitely I feel like this one in particular. Actually, I don't know. There's a lot of coffees that like lean more on that earthy side that are like almost like a Marmite, Vegemite, where it's like you love it or you hate it kind of thing. Yeah. So it's always interesting to see like where people's palates land.
Yeah, I'm definitely like a smoother, can't handle the punch.
Light and kind of fruity.
Because I'm a white wine person.
Okay.
Like I'm not a red wine person, and I think there's some transfers there.
Totally. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm the opposite because white until recently I think I hadn't had like good white wine.
Okay.
Like I don't know, just like. Store bought stuff. So, but I've heard like there's really
good ones,
complex red or white wines. So, okay. So for this next coffee, I have a game for us to play. It's called Vibe Check.
Okay.
So what we'll do is I'm gonna list kind of a topic, and you give me like the overall vibe of said thing at said moment. Okay. Social media.
So like good vibe, bad vibe?
Yeah. Or whatever kind of comes to mind, and feel free to elaborate or not elaborate as much as you'd like.
Yeah, I think it's sort of bad vibe right now. I think that we're seeing audience retention drop off on certain platforms, which is good to a certain extent because that means people are maybe doing more stuff outside. But I think people's brains are also fried. Like I really think that dopamine receptors are not recovering, and that people are seeking alternative forms of getting that stuff. So I'd say like social media is tough right now.
Yeah.
Not in terms of like viewership, but just in terms of like the whole thing with Elon and Twitter too, which is like that's emblematic.
Unreal. Like it feels like truly like comical and just like. How is this real life sometimes? It's unbelievable.
Sad.
Yeah. Okay, housing.
Housing is bad.
Bad
vibes. Yeah. And that's because people aren't building everything that I talked about.
Yeah, totally. Education.
Education it's decent. California is like doing this weird thing with algebra where they're like,
really?
You don't have to learn algebra anymore.
Huh.
Yeah, and so I think that's not great. And then I think that student loan payments starting back up is tough for people. So I would say it's not awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Infrastructure.
Infrastructure is improving. Like we have the CHIPS Act, we have the IRA, we have the IIGA, and so we're seeing a lot of investment in manufacturing. We see a lot of incentives for people to build like semiconductor facilities in Arizona, and I think like that's really good. But like in terms of public infrastructure, dams are like all of the U.S. dams are at a 50-year aging point, and after they're 50 years old, it's kind of like okay, you need to like reevaluate this dam. Yeah, and I just feel like we're not so.
Yeah, a little concerning.
Yeah, a little. I mean, those things are really important.
Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of have a water crisis going on in the southern part of the United States,
totally.
Southwest. So.
Yeah, big time Colorado River.
Yeah, it's not a river anymore.
Yeah.
It's a creek.
How about Bidenomics?
The
vibes there.
Like Bidenomics. Bidenomics is really interesting because it ties into manufacturing, the IIGA, the CHIPS Act, IRA.
Yeah.
But I would say that it's done a bad job at talking about what people care about. So it's awesome. Like it's really great stuff. But because they focused so much on this like subsector of the economy that people are kind of like, I don't care that much. Also, we're not going to see the benefit of this till like 15 years, which is really important to invest for the future. But I would say that Bidenomics should have spent more time figuring out student loans.
Yeah. Totally. They kind of just like threw the forgiveness thing out there and that was it.
Yeah.
Interesting. How about the upcoming election next year?
I don't know. Okay, this is like, I think Donald Trump is so funny, but I think he's a terrible president, right? I think he's hilarious.
Yeah.
But he's scary.
Very entertaining.
Yeah, like DeSantis has dropped out. basically.
Yeah.
And I think that it's just like I'm very showman-y. Like it's becoming more and more entertainment. Like Vivek, I think his name is.
Oh yeah.
I think I
Ramaswamy.
Yeah, I think he is like saying things just are not true. Robert F. Kennedy is saying things that just aren't true about how mortgage rates work. I don't know. I think that there needs to be like civic tests that people have to pass before they run for president.
Yeah.
Because it really is embarrassing.
Yeah, big time. From Idaho, like it's almost like, so we're almost known for like our comical gubernatorial races.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Like there's this one guy who would like dress up like a biker and like attend the debate as a biker and like talked about how we need to storm Washington D.C. And I feel like that's like the national stage now. It's crazy.
Like a cyclist or like a
No,
motorcycle?
Like motorcycle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So it's like
yikes.
It's a little familiar.
Yeah.
Watching the national stuff now, it's like,
yeah.
oh man, it's not contained anymore to small elections.
Yeah, Kentucky, we've had Mitch McConnell for longer than I've been alive.
Yeah.
And he's fallen off his rocker. So it's just, yeah.
He's on another planet right now.
I don't know where he is. Yeah. But like he's not here with us. Yeah.
Big time. How about the stock market right now? What are the vibes there?
I think they're decent. I think we get a little fixated on the stock market, but
Yeah.
I would say it's doing fine. 60% of companies are basically unprofitable and they've returned to less than treasuries. And so I think it's just like a really interesting time where we're seeing people focus more on bonds as an investment because they're yielding like 5-6% versus stocks where it's kind of like, will this thing go up? We don't know.
Yeah.
And also for the past so many years, like VCs have just dumped these pretty terrible companies onto the stock market. And I think we're seeing the fallout of that. Like there's just not good companies beyond the top 10.
Right, especially like tech sector. It feels like feeling that big time. How about the vibes of art, kind of just broadly?
Oh, art. I think it's going okay.
Yeah.
I was out mountain biking and there's these two dudes who met up with us on the trail and they were freestyle skiers, but they would ski like skaters. And so they would go down like you know how skaters ski on poles, like on handlebars on stairs?
Skater like roller skates?
No, like skateboards. Like you know how people
yeah.
skate on handrails?
Yeah, yeah.
They would do that with skis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so they made this whole movie about it.
Uh-huh.
And so I feel like that sort of art is like well and alive where people are like showing their passions and like here's this thing that I care about where I'm skiing down the side of a stair, which is bizarre.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, I know it's super hard to visualize.
Huh.
I'll send you the link so you
like
can
no
see it.
snow, they're just like
There's snow around them, but
okay.
no snow on the rail.
But
yeah.
it's like a park setting.
No, it's like just how skaters go.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Okay, yeah, I definitely want to check that
Yeah,
out.
I know, it's awesome. Yeah.
That's super sick. So you feel like there's like good stuff out there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think so.
Right on.
Yeah.
How about the job market vibes there?
I think the tech sector is recovering from its little tech recession. The finance sector is getting people back into the office. I think that we still need to see wages do something for people to feel better.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting because we're seeing all these strikes happen. Like we're seeing a lot of labor market movement where auto workers are like, we need to be paid more. Here in LA, you saw the writers and actors,
Yep.
the animators. I guess they're going to go on strike in 2024. So I think we're seeing employees really say to their employers, like, it needs to be different and you need to make things different. And I think that's decent vibes.
Yeah, totally. How about AI?
I think that we're still trying to figure out like the policy regulation around AI. I think that there's two very divided camps where people are like, we have to regulate this, like we have to make sure it doesn't Mad Max us all into non-existence. And then you have people who are like, you just have to let technology run free, man. And I think that's making the vibes around AI really weird because OpenAI is lobbying for them to be the one group.
Right.
But you have Meta with Zuck being like, no, we should have open source AI, right? So I think that's the thing that we're going to have to figure out is the regulatory approach.
Yeah, big time. Taylor Swift.
I mean, yeah, she's dating that NFL guy.
Yeah, she's
so,
like in the news every day.
The Empire State Building lit up in her honor. Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah, there's like a
Oh
picture of her
God.
eating a chicken nugget, and it was like ketchup and a little bit of ranch.
Yes.
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
Empire State Building lit up.
Oh my God, that's
because
insane.
Of that. Yeah.
She just runs the world now, I feel like.
It's bizarre to me. It's almost like too much.
Yeah.
like, no offense to the Swifties out there, but
I know I don't want to anger them, but
yeah, well, that's the thing.
I know
That's what makes her so powerful. It's
That's
like
crazy.
it's not her, it's her fans.
Yeah.
And I think like I have a whole thesis that is like when I talk about it in bars or like outside, people are like, oh my god, because I'm like, Taylor Swift is like the next iteration of religion in my opinion. Yeah. So
totally. I definitely agree with that. It feels like a unifying force, but also like can be super toxic.
Yeah, because if she says like go storm the Capitol, ladies, they're gonna do that. You know?
Yeah.
So I think that's a thing. Yeah.
She has that Donald Trump energy of like being able to go shoot somebody in broad daylight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people would be like, she didn't mean it though.
Right. Like it was art. You don't understand what she's
you
doing.
understand. It's art. She's gonna write a song about it.
Yeah.
It's for her music.
Oh, that's great. Last one is the labor movement. I know we talked about it a little
Oh
bit.
yeah,
but,
sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think so okay. So I think it's good. I think it's great that the auto workers are like, we need more money and we need a shorter work week. I think that's important. Writers got what they mostly wanted, but you have these people, just as an example, cutting countertops and quartz countertops, and that releases silica. The silica gets into your lungs. You have incurable lung disease because you're cutting countertops for your job. And so I think we have a lot of workers who are in these roles, like these countertop cutters, who are dying, right? Like they're dying in their 20s and 30s because silica is tearing up their lungs and making them essentially bleed out from the inside.
Yeah.
And they have no representation, right? Like they have no people at the table fighting for them per se. And so I think like in terms of the labor market movement, like it'd be great if we saw more of that. Yeah.
Yeah. It feels like the ball is rolling, but it's like definitely not far enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The next coffee I've got for us is another LA roaster called Maru. And they have a couple of shops. They're not super
Green
close
apple.
by. But this is a Burundi coffee. So we went from like Central South America to now like African coffees. So
Okay.
this is kind of the journey we're on now.
Okay.
We'll go. This is the. Oh yeah, pour out the old stuff for sure. How are you liking this so far?
It's good. Yeah, it's a cute idea.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how you like some of these other coffees. I think these are going to be... Also, let me know how you're doing on time.
Yeah, that's what I checked.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Are we doing all good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome. Oh my gosh, we've been recording a long time.
Yeah, did you
Holy
not know
smokes,
that?
I did not
Okay.
even realize. It's just been flying by. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay.
No, I'm allowed to do a time check like much earlier. So
Okay.
just fully...
Yeah, I think if we wrap
disappeared.
in like 15, that'd be good
Yeah,
for me. Okay,
totally.
Cool.
Okay, awesome. So we'll talk about your writing a little bit, just
Sure.
because I feel like you're a great writer, and that's something that I feel like really comes through in your work. Based on your writing, I can tell that, or assume that you're a really avid reader.
Yeah.
Where do you find things to read?
Oh man, like I've been reading for a super long time. Like that's how I got into writing in the first place, was through reading, which I think most people do. And so I just kind of go to bookstores, especially secondhand bookstores, and look around and see what cover catches my eye and grab things that way. I also really like the classics, so like went through a big Russian lit phase where I was reading all those guys, and I can't pronounce any of their names, but Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, all those people, and then philosophy, really like that kind of stuff, and then really like fiction. So I feel like you learn a lot about writing nonfiction through reading fiction.
Yeah.
And so yeah.
Right on.
Uh-huh.
Do you have any like favorite nonfiction?
Oh man, let's see. There's this book called The Future of Nostalgia, where it talks about how nostalgia has shaped our future. Wow. Yeah, the title really speaks for itself there. But it's reflective of the USSR and sort of like what they went through and how nostalgia shaped them, because that was like a theme that I was really obsessed with. It was like, why do we keep on looking back instead of forward?
Yeah. I thought
It's a good book.
you've had a lot of really interesting stuff. I thought you talked about that with like Marvel and all
Yeah,
of the remakes
yeah, exactly.
and stuff. So.
Yeah, we were kind of stuck in a loop.
Yeah, big time. Okay, I'm interested to hear kind of your thought process and when you first decided to introduce like some of the writing and poetry into your economic breakdowns and analysis.
I mean, that started somewhat recently, like probably this year, and it was mostly just because like I was like, how do I humanize this a little bit more? And I was like reading these poems, and I was like, these poems kind of align with like what I just said. And I really like poetry, and so I just started including them at the end, and then started building some newsletters around them. And I really like reading everything because I feel like economics is everything, right? And so I just was like, this just makes sense to me to incorporate the two. And people seem to like it because you oftentimes don't get the two in conjunction.
Totally.
Yeah.
I found, like, personally reading your stuff, that those passages really, like, take me out of, like, the textbook kind of, like, haze that I'll get in when it's, like, really dense economic stuff. And it, like, really brings you out back into the world. And it's like, oh, this is, like, a good, like, in and out balance. So, I really enjoyed it.
Good.
Who are your biggest writing influences, and what do you love about them?
Oh, I mean, Morgan Housel, of course, Psychology of Money. He just really does a good job at humanizing finance. And then George Saunders, who wrote A Swim in the Pond in the Rain, I love his writing. He does a lot of analysis around Russian lit. And he's like, how do you read Russian lit? Because it's so dense and scary and big. And I just love the way that he breaks stuff down. It's so cool. So I'd say he's really been influential as well. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like I need more recommendations for stuff like that.
Sure.
Really fallen off the reading train lately.
Most people do.
Yeah. It's tricky. I feel like audiobooks is something that have been helpful, but I don't retain stuff nearly in the same way that I do when I'm reading it. So, what's the best book that you've read lately?
What have I... Master and the Margarita. It's by a Russian guy who Bokurov, I think, and it's really funny. Like, it's really good. Like, it's translated, and so it's a good translation, which is nice. But it's like about the devil visiting Moscow, and it's just this kind of scary story of him like going through and interfacing with all these different characters within Moscow. And it's really well written, and it's really a beautiful story. And there's like all these twists and turns where you're like, oh wow, I didn't expect that guy to die, you know. And so it's neat. And also like really bizarre things will happen, and he won't make you feel like they're bizarre. Like, there's a cat that's a character, and the cat just exists and can walk around and can talk. And like people in the story will be like, that cat is doing that, but like he never reflects on it as an author. Like, he's just like, yes, the cat's doing that. Like, these people are silly for even questioning it, and it's nice.
Oh, that's kind of fun. What's an old classic you can go back to and read time and time again?
Let's see, I'm trying to think through my bookshelf. You know, the obvious answer is Harry Potter, but I don't really want to say that.
Don't get canceled.
I know. She did a really good job. I wish she hadn't done what she did. Because that was also like really influential for me, like just her storytelling. And she's not cool what she said at all. But I would say like those books have been really, really good.
Totally. Yeah. Who doesn't love Harry Potter?
Yeah. There's also this book called Graceling that is like something I read when I was little, and I read it again recently actually, and it's for young adults, so I shouldn't be reading it. But it's about this like land, like this foreign land where people get born with different color eyes, and if you have two different color eyes, then you have like these special powers. And this girl has this power of killing people, and so it's her like grappling with a life where the people that she's closest to, she can really hurt and kill them, and how does she manage that? It's really well written.
Dang, that's interesting. Okay, that's all the writing questions I've got. We can move on to, actually, before we do, how did you like this
I like
coffee?
this one. Yeah, it's smoother. I like
a little lighter.
Like, I think the lightness is what
I
seek. Yeah, I think so.
Okay, nice. The lightness is what I seek. We need to put that on a quote.
It sounds like very Jedi.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Star Wars.
This is our final coffee. This is a coffee roaster called Little Wolf, and they're based out of, I'm going to probably butcher this, but Ipswich, Massachusetts. It's like right outside of Boston. And this is a Ethiopia. So hopefully right up your alley in terms of seeking that light.
Seeking the lightness.
Yeah, you're welcome to check this one out too. Ethiopia is like really known for bright floral coffees. So
yeah, I feel that. I sense that. Very cool.
Awesome. Okay, so this next set of questions is focused on Gen Z and education for the future, or educating the future. So I know this is like a big mission of yours and something that you talk a lot about, is like, and really have committed a lot of time and effort to. So I guess what's one thing specifically related to kind of the void of community that you've talked about? I'm butchering this question. Sorry. I was half reading it. This is
and
the problem,
then
is
your brain went ahead.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Yeah, I get it.
Okay, I'm just going to restart.
Yeah, no worries.
One thing I've heard you talk a lot about is the void of community in today's world. Community is like a huge part and the driving factor, honestly, for like me starting this coffee business. So what are some things that you feel are missing from how we experience community?
I think that there's no third places, so there isn't really like a podcast studio where you can like go with your friends. And I think that's why we have such a big car culture. It's because people are seeking like a place outside of work and home to sort of hang out. And so I'd say that's the big thing that's missing from community. And it also ties into what I was talking about earlier about zoning laws. And so in a lot of suburbs, like you live in your house and then you drive, 20 minutes to the grocery store. But if there's more mixed use residential where you had a coffee shop in the middle of the suburb, like that could create a community spot where people don't necessarily have to drive to, or they feel like it's not out of the way. And it's more centered within a community versus people having to hike there.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the big thing, is like we don't have cities that are designed around building community, and then we tend to avoid it via the vehicles. Yeah.
As somebody who's like wanting to build a space like that, what would be something that you would want to see or like do differently?
I think it's tough. Like I think a lot of people have tried to do it, but it's really about like curating a spot where people feel comfortable hanging out. So I think WeWork, like the spot that you have here, has done a good job. But I think the thing is that you have to have hangouts that don't feel forced, and that's really difficult, because if you're like, oh, it's game night, everybody, like that's gonna feel weird. So it's like, how do you make sure it maintains being genuine? And I don't have, if I had the solution, I'd be doing it, but I think that's the big thing, is like, how do you maintain a genuine sense of community while still building something?
Totally. Okay, can you talk to me a little bit about your philosophy around educating, and specifically like educating young people about the economy and like financial literacy?
I think that a lot of cognitive dissonance and a lot of anger and sadness that people have comes from not understanding the world that they exist in. And so for me, like my philosophy is like, I'm going to make this, for a while it was like, make it really fun, make it really light, do these skits where I pretend to be Jerome Powell, where I pretend to be the stock market, and hopefully that will draw people in. But now it's like, I just need to meet people where they're at and provide them the tools that they need at the moment that they need. And so I don't know. I like, my whole philosophy is like, how do you make people feel welcomed? And I'm still figuring that out,
Yeah, totally. How do you feel like your new book that's coming out, we'll talk about your plugs and stuff, but thank you for sending me some chapters in advance to read. How do you find that kind of fitting in with like your overall kind of goal and mission and aligning with those?
So there isn't really like an intro to econ book for people. So the goal is like, this book will feel really tangible and feel really accessible. Like there's drawings, my drawings are in there. The language hopefully isn't too highbrow, and it'll just be a resource guide for people who are like, I don't know what inflation is, and I don't know where to start. And I think that's the biggest thing, is you just have to give people a starting line, and then they can go hop off to wherever they need. And that's my goal, is like, this book will be a central spot for people who need a spot to start.
No, I love that. I definitely think you're going to accomplish that. So
Thanks.
As somebody who did not do well in econ, I found it very easy to read and like super informative. So,
Good. Thank you. Yeah, we're in final edits right now, so a little stressful.
Yeah, that's amazing though. Congratulations on getting that far. That's a ton of work. So, okay. Can you talk to me about kind of where your passion for economics comes from?
I started off in school as an engineering major. I really didn't know that finance was a path that you could go down. And I took this econ class with Dr. Brian Strau, and I just was like, this is sick. I didn't know people studied this sort of stuff. And so I took up econ, took up finance, and then I started tutoring. And I was like, oh, sick. Like, this is really neat. And I had kept this options trading blog all throughout college. And so I've always just been really passionate about, like, sharing education. And I wanted to be a teacher, like, when I graduated. but this is kind of the best of both worlds. Is I get to sort of educate people and help them along their economic journey. And so, yeah.
Sweet. Do you have any thoughts on YouTube and TikTok as platforms for educators like yourself?
I think they're key. Yeah, like you kind of have to meet people where they're at, and they're not always in the classroom. So if you're able to make content that meets a lot of people where they're watching videos, and the algorithm is kind to you, that's the best place to be.
Yeah.
So I think it's super important to be on there. It just can be a little difficult.
Yeah. What do they do well, and like what's something that you would want to see them improve for, specifically like someone like you who does a lot of educational?
They feed people dopamine hits. Yeah. So it's a lot of like mindless content because that's what people click on.
Right.
So I think there's a world where my friend Doug was talking about this, like where we redesign social media platforms to be more education focused or like feed people more education. And I think that could be really beneficial.
Yeah. Big time. Okay, what are the biggest gaps in education for young people when it comes to financial literacy?
They just don't know how to start. And I think that we don't have the infrastructure in place to help them, like set up a checking account. How do you balance a budget? Like there's personal finance classes, but people tune out. They don't pay attention. And so I think there needs to be like applicable frameworks for them, and how do they approach it. And I also think there needs to be centralization. An unpopular opinion that I have is the FedNow.
I had this as a question, and I love this idea.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so the FedNow platform should be a centralized place that replaces Venmo, replaces PayPal, but like all the stocks that you would need to trade are on there. It gets sticky with like government intervening with stocks, etc. But like bonds are on there, financial education is on there, because I think the issue is like there's so much going on. Like fintech is so big and sprawling that it's really difficult to figure out where you need to be. And I think that if we had a centralized app that was sponsored by the government, that would be super beneficial for people to get a launching point from.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think
Thanks.
that would be fantastic, especially like having that removed from, people who are taking a slice of all your transactions.
Yeah, totally. I was telling somebody in the tech world about it yesterday, and they were like, I hate that because the government is going to surveil you. And I'm like, they're already watching your every move, dude. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Just like...
And then there's alternatives if you don't want that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Big time. Okay, if you could instill 3 things in young people today, what would you want them to be educated about or learn or kind of understand?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is just like finding passions. And I feel like this is really difficult. And I feel really lucky that like I've found my passions in life, and that like I give myself the space for that. But I feel like either people feel like they can't achieve things, so they never try, or they get worried about even going after stuff. Like they know what they want, they don't feel gutsy enough to do it, which is totally understandable. Like when I started my stuff, I had no safety net. Like it was a huge risk. And so I think that's the thing. It's like, how do you find your passions, and then how do you trust yourself enough to go after them? Like those would be the 2 things that I'd encourage people to explore. Yeah, it's difficult, but I think like what you do, right, with your coffee, like that's key. It's just how do you give yourself the space to explore these cool ideas that you have and go after them as much as you can.
Yeah, totally. I don't know either.
Yeah,
figuring out as you go.
I know. Yeah, it's not something that you can just like fix, right? Like it's tough.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, last question I ask everybody: what makes you feel most alive?
I think it changes, but like day to day, it's biking. Yeah, like or just like being active and like doing these things. And then also like I teach in classrooms sometimes, and like when I get a question that is really thoughtful and you can just tell they've been ticking away as I've been talking, like that's really cool. I think it's just like when you see this synergy happen within people's brains of like, oh, like that's how that works, and like this is how I'm supposed to go about this, and but what if I tried it this way? Like I think that's super, like that is just the best feeling ever, like seeing things click for people.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This was such a fun interview, and really appreciate the time.
Yeah.
What would you like to share with the people, and where can people find you?
I have a book coming out in April 2024. It'll be Amazon pre-ordered soon. And then people can find me on Substack, Kyla.substack.com, on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at Kyla Scan, on Twitter, and across all those platforms at Kyla Scan. And honestly, if you search Kyla Finance, Kyla finance, I come up. So that's the cool thing about having a unique name. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, I love the book, and I can't wait to read the whole thing when it comes out.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you so much.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.